I used to think that locking my doors and windows was enough. I don't think that anymore. It happened when I was 23, living with my college roommate, Brian, in a small, cheap rental house off campus. It was an old, creaky place, half falling apart, but it was affordable and close to town. We didn't think much about security. Just two guys living cheap, partying hard, scraping by. It was late October, just starting to get cold. Leaves were blowing through the street. Nights were longer, darker. I worked nights at a local diner. Brian worked part-time at a gas station. So there were plenty of times when the house was empty, or just one of us was home alone. It started with the feeling first. That crawling, itchy sense that someone was watching me when I was sitting on the couch, or brushing my teeth, or lying in bed. I'd catch glimpses sometimes. Movement outside the living room window, a shadow shifting beyond the curtains. I told myself it was just my imagination. The neighborhood wasn't great. Stray cats, raccoons, even junkies sometimes. Until one night, it wasn't just glimpses anymore. It was staring. It was about 1 a.m. I was home alone. Brian was working the graveyard shift. I was sitting on the couch, lights low, playing video games, when I got that feeling again. Hair standing up, pulse quickening. That primal knowledge that someone was watching me. I glanced toward the front window. At first, I didn't see anything. Then the porch light flickered, and I saw him. A man, standing just outside the window, close enough that his breath fogged the glass. His face was pale, distorted, his mouth twisted into a half smile. He didn't move, didn't tap, didn't try to break in. He just stood there, watching. I froze. My controller slipped out of my hand and thudded onto the carpet. I scrambled for my phone, dialing 911 with shaking fingers. When I looked back, he was gone. No sound, no footprints on the porch, like he had melted into the night. The cops came. They shined flashlights around, asked me questions. Could have been a homeless guy, one of them said with a shrug. Keep your doors locked. They left, and I was alone again. I didn't sleep that night. Brian thought it was hilarious when I told him. Saw a ghost, bro, he joked, slapping my back. I let it go, until it happened again. 2 nights later. This time, Brian was home. We were watching TV, laughing, eating leftover pizza when the power went out. Just, snap, total darkness. Brian cursed and went to check the breaker box outside. I stayed inside, fumbling with my phone for light. And that's when I saw it. A face pressed against the back window. Not the front one this time. The kitchen window, looking straight at me from the backyard. Same man. Same cold, twisted smile. This time he moved. His hand came up slowly and started tapping on the glass with one dirty, yellowed fingernail. Tap, tap, tap. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. I just stared. Brian must have fixed the power because the lights flickered back on. In the instant of brightness, he was gone again. Brian came back inside, saw me white as a sheet, asked what the hell happened. I couldn't even speak. The next morning, we found footprints in the backyard. Bare feet, no shoes, even though it was freezing outside. We called the landlord, asked if we could install cameras. He laughed and said no one else had ever complained. Maybe we were just paranoid kids. That week was hell. The feeling of being watched never left. Every creak of the house sounded louder. Every shadow looked like him. I barely slept. Brian started sleeping with a baseball bat by his bed. Then, one night, it escalated. We woke up around 3 a.m. to the sound of glass shattering. Someone had thrown a rock through the front window. Brian and I grabbed our bats, ran to the living room. And there he was, inside, standing calmly in the hallway, between us and the front door. Same pale face, same awful smile. For one horrible second, no one moved. Then he lunged. We fought like animals. Brian swung the bat, hitting him across the arm. I grabbed a lamp and smashed it over his head. The man stumbled back, hissing like some kind of feral creature, and bolted out the door. We called the police again. This time they took it seriously. They found him 2 blocks away, hiding under an abandoned porch. Turns out he wasn't some random homeless guy. He was a registered sex offender, had been released a year earlier, and was living out of abandoned buildings, lurking around neighborhoods. He confessed to the break-in, said he liked watching people through their windows, said he liked waiting for them to invite him inside. I still hear those taps sometimes in my dreams. Still see that pale face behind the glass. Still wake up gasping, convinced there's someone just outside my window, smiling. And now, I never sit near windows at night. Because not every monster stays in the dark. Some are just waiting for you to notice them. They say the woods are beautiful at night, silent, untouched, peaceful. I will never believe that again. It happened about 2 years ago when my friend Caleb and I decided to go camping. Not in a designated campsite, not where there were security patrols and floodlights. We wanted the real experience. Deep woods, no signal, just us and nature. Biggest mistake of my life. We drove 4 hours out of town, down a battered dirt road that eventually disappeared altogether. The last thing we passed was an old, rusted fence with a hand-painted sign that read, "Private property, no trespassing." But according to Caleb, the land past it wasn't owned anymore. It's abandoned. No one cares, he said. I cared later. We hiked a few miles into the forest, set up our little 2-man tent next to a small clearing. We were miles from anyone or anything. The first day was perfect. We fished, built a fire, cracked some beers, and talked about everything and nothing. When night fell, it got colder than we expected. The fire seemed smaller. The woods, darker than I had ever seen before. A kind of pitch black you can't find anywhere near civilization. Around midnight, as we sat by the dying fire, we heard it. Knocking. 3 slow knocks. Coming from the direction of the trees. Rhythmic, deliberate. We froze. Caleb laughed nervously, saying it was probably a branch falling. Maybe an animal knocking something over. He grabbed another beer, trying to act tough. But the knocking came again. Closer this time. 3 sharp knocks, like knuckles against wood. We shone our flashlights into the trees, but saw nothing. The woods just swallowed the light. Like they didn't want us to see what was out there. We decided it was probably just our imaginations. Maybe some big raccoon. Maybe the beer. We zipped up inside the tent and tried to sleep. I woke up around 3 a.m. because something was tapping on the tent fabric. Not animal scratching. Not the wind. It was a finger. I know the sound of a human knuckle tapping soft nylon. Tap, tap, tap. I didn't dare breathe. I nudged Caleb. He was already awake, staring at the roof of the tent with wide, terrified eyes. Then we heard it, clear as day. A voice just outside the tent. Let me in. It wasn't a shout. It wasn't a threat. It was worse. It was pleading, like a sick child asking to come inside from the cold. Neither of us moved. We didn't speak. We didn't even blink. Another tap on the side of the tent. Another whisper. I'm cold. Please let me in. I reached for my hunting knife in the sleeping bag. Caleb shook his head violently, silently mouthing no. That's when the zipper to the tent started moving. Very slowly, starting from the top. Someone, or something, was trying to open it. I grabbed the zipper from the inside and yanked it shut as hard as I could. Caleb scrambled for the flashlight, but it slipped out of his hands and rolled across the tent floor. In the brief moment of panic, we both heard the worst sound of all. Breathing. Deep, rattling, and right against the thin fabric wall. I swear I could feel warm breath through the nylon. We sat there, clutching our knives, hearts hammering, until sunrise. No more taps. No more whispers. Just endless, agonizing silence. When the first light crept through the trees, we burst out of the tent. No one was there. No footprints. No sign of life. Just the faint outline of a handprint pressed against the outside of the tent. Long, thin fingers. Too long for any normal human. We packed up in 10 minutes, leaving half our stuff behind. Didn't speak the whole hike back. We told ourselves it was probably some crazy homeless guy, maybe a prankster living in the woods. That made sense, right? Except, 3 months later, I was scrolling an online forum about local urban legends when I stumbled on a thread. The Knocker of Marrow Woods. People talked about hearing knocks deep in the trees. About voices asking to be let in. About tents being unzipped from the outside at night. One user posted a grainy photo. A handprint, smeared against a tent wall. The fingers were impossibly long, just like the one we saw. I haven't gone camping since. I don't think I ever will. Because some things out there don't want to hurt you. They just want you to invite them in. And if you ever do, you won't be coming back. I always thought that once you grew up, the fear of monsters under the bed would fade. I was wrong. It started one night after I moved into a cheap apartment in an older part of town. I was broke, desperate, and didn't have the luxury of being picky. The landlord told me the last tenant left suddenly, left behind furniture and all. I didn't ask questions. I should have. The first night, I noticed it. I was lying in bed, trying to ignore the creaks of the old wood frame and the occasional groans of the building settling. Then, just as I was drifting off, I heard a whisper, so soft I thought it was my imagination. It came from directly beneath me. Hey, you awake? I shot upright, heart hammering against my ribs. I turned on the lamp beside the bed, scanned the room. Nothing. I leaned over the edge and looked underneath. Just a dusty floor and a few stray socks from whoever lived there before me. Telling myself it was a dream, I turned the light off and forced my eyes closed. The next night, it happened again. Same time, around 2 a.m. The whisper was clearer this time. More urgent. I'm cold. Come down here. I stayed frozen in bed, squeezing my eyes shut so tightly it hurt. I didn't sleep a second that night. At sunrise, I threw myself out of bed and rushed outside, breathing the icy morning air like it was my first taste of freedom. Neighbors avoided my eyes when I asked if anyone else had experienced strange things here. A woman 2 doors down muttered something about things that don't belong above ground. I didn't want to know what she meant. That night, I decided I would stay awake and catch whoever, or whatever, was doing this. I set up my phone camera facing the underside of my bed. I lay there, pretending to sleep, recording everything. At exactly 2:03 a.m., the whisper came. But it wasn't just a voice this time. From the narrow space under my bed, I heard scratching, slow, deliberate, like fingernails dragging along the wooden floor. I squeezed my eyes open just enough to peek. The scratching grew louder. Then, a face pressed up against the underside of the mattress. I could see it through the thin material. A mouth, moving. Come down. It's safe here. I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. I wanted to scream, but I felt like my chest was being crushed. The face pressed harder, distorting the mattress. Smiling now. A wide, awful grin full of broken teeth. I could see eyes, empty, black pits, staring right through me. My phone slipped from the nightstand, hitting the floor with a loud crack. The face vanished instantly. The scratching stopped. I bolted from the room, phone forgotten, and didn't stop running until I reached the street. I slept in my car that night. Windows locked. Lights on. The next morning, I went back with 2 friends to collect my things. The bedroom was freezing cold, even though it was the middle of summer. There were deep scratch marks under the bed, long gouges in the floorboards, like something had been trying to claw its way out. My phone was still on the floor. Screen shattered. The video was corrupted except for the audio. When I played it back, we heard it. A voice, right next to the mic. Next time, you won't leave. I moved out that day. Didn't bother breaking the lease. Lost my deposit. Lost half my stuff. I didn't care. Even now, months later, I don't sleep on beds anymore. I sleep on the floor. Lights on. Ears plugged. Because sometimes, when I let my guard down, I swear I can still hear it whispering. Come down. It's safe here.